The sight of a Viking longship made Europe tremble, for it carried a fearsome crew, the greatest sailors of their day and the fiercest warriors.
The Vikings terrorized the late 8th to early 11th century with pirating, raiding, and trading throughout parts of Europe. Today, let's dive into their world and explore their dark rituals and practices that they were into. From bloody sacrifices to horrific burial rituals. Let's talk about these and more only in today's video. Top 10 Dark Things the Vikings Did, Part 2. Also, check out Part 1. Starting off this countdown, we have the swords. The Vikings were armed with a number of weapons, like long axes and spears. But the weapon they liked the most were their long swords. These swords would then be passed down from generation to generation. Before passing their sword down to their son, they would share stories of who they killed with their sword and what battle was like. In fact, they were so protective of their swords that they would always carry them on their backs, and they would sleep with them beside them, because you had to be armed and ready at all times. Now, I think the creepiest part of this whole thing is that they would give their swords disturbing names, like calling them the Widowmaker or the Corpse Bramble, so on and so on. That is pretty messed up if you ask me. In our 9th spot, we have the cremation ceremony. And if you guys like this video, make sure to give it a big thumbs up because it really helps us out. Okay, this next point is extremely messed up. So after the death of a chief, they had this really weird cremation ceremony for him, which involved a number of dark things. So after the chief died, his body was left in a grave for 10 days. During those 10 days, new clothes were being made for him. Then one of his slave girls were selected to join him in the afterlife, meaning they would kill her. So on that day, the girl was given a number of drinks to intoxicate her. Then she had to get it on with every man in the village. After that, she was strangled to death while being stabbed in the ribs. When she was dead, she was placed alongside the chief on a ship. They did this so that the chief would have someone to serve him in the afterlife. And then the boat containing the two were set on fire and pushed out to sea. Moving on, at number 8, we have the sacrifices. Apparently every 9 years, 81 people were sacrificed during Yule. Yule was thought to have happened on January 12th and was celebrated to either honor the dead or get good luck in the new year, to celebrate the sun and light, or to honor Thor. We don't know for sure, but those are just some possibilities. This was celebrated for 9 days. Each day, 9 heads would be offered to the gods, meaning in the end, there would be 81 people sacrificed for the gods. Their bodies were hung by the temples. So that's absolutely horrifying. Coming in at number 7, we have ERIK the Red. So the Vikings were known for their brutal killings. I mean, they were pretty violent. But there was one dude that was way too violent to be a Viking. Imagine that. This guy's name was ERIK the Red. He was given that name due to his red hair and red beard, and because of his tendency to kill. He had a nasty, nasty temper. In 980, ERIK's servant caused a landslide that destroyed his neighbor's house. So the servant was killed, and this infuriated ERIK, who then killed his servant's killer and another member of his clan. In the end, this got him banished, so he moved. And this time, he was living more north in Iceland. But while living there, he got into another fight with a different neighbor. ERIK went on to kill this neighbor as well. As a result, he was banished again. So this guy just had a life of conflict and killing. Moving on, at number 6, we have the odd pets. Nowadays we have hamsters, birds, fish, and dogs and cats as household pets. Well, back in the day, it was kind of the same. The Vikings enjoyed having pets. They had cats and dogs, but also falcons, peacocks, and bears. Oh my. They would have bears as pets. So they would go around trapping bear cubs and then would raise them as members of their family. Typically it would be brown bears, but some even had polar bears. But polar bears were meant mainly for noblemen. Here's the thing though, if their bear ever got loose and injured someone, well, the owner would have to pay the price, either by death or they would be banished. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with the repurposing. I don't know how else to name this, and you'll see why. So it turns out that the Vikings were quite resourceful. I mean, they managed to find a way to turn their own urine into fire. Don't know how they discovered this or why they tried to experiment with their urine, but they did. So basically, they would boil touchwood, which was a tree bark fungus, and they would boil it in a pot of urine. They did this for days, and I can only imagine how bad that must have smelt. Anyways, when that was done, they would take the bark and pound it into a strip of felt-like material. Again, who came up with this idea? Like, oh, I'm just gonna pee and then take some bark, put it in, boil, and who came up with this? Anyway, because of the sodium nitrate in urine, these strips would smolder rather than burn. So they would just carry around these little urine strips and start a fire wherever they went. How resourceful. Seriously, who the hell thought of that? I don't know. Moving on to number 4, we have the battle rituals. Viking warriors were actually pretty superstitious when it came to their battles. As a result, they had a special ritual they would perform before their battles. First off, each of their weapons were marked with different symbols. These symbols represented things like strength, luck, and courage. They also were very cautious. Days leading up to the battle, they would look out for any omens. If they thought they found a bad omen, they would do what they could to reverse it. And lastly, they would make battle sacrifices. They would sacrifice big, strong animals like boars, stallions, or bulls. I guess the thought was they are sacrificing their strength and in return are asking the gods for strength and support in battle. Moving on to number 3, we have the spirits. The Vikings believed that once they buried the dead, that they could come alive again, like zombies, and harm the townspeople. So they took several precautions to avoid this from ever happening. Number 1, they would tie the dead's big toes together, and nails were pressed into the soles of their feet. This was done so that if they woke up, they wouldn't be able to walk. When the dead person in the coffin was carried out of the house, the carriers would stop walking and make a shape of the cross with the coffin by lowering and raising it. Sometimes the person was carried out through a thing called a corpse door. Basically, it was a hole in the wall that they would make. They would then carry the dead through the hole and then patch it back up. They did this because they believed the dead could only return the same way that they came. But if the hole was patched up, they wouldn't be able to get back in that way. The body was also carried out feet first, so that the corpse couldn't see which route they were taking to get to their burial spot. And sometimes their entire head and eyes were just wrapped and covered as an extra precaution. And lastly, when the coffin was at the burial spot, they would have to turn over any items previously used by the dead person, like chairs, stools, mugs, etc. Again, this was all done with fear that they would come back from the dead. And at number 2, we have the DRAUGR. The DRAUGR is an undead creature from Norse mythology. It's basically a zombie. So it's said that this zombie creature was created if a corpse was not buried in a horizontal position, but they were left upright. Typically, people that were mean or greedy in their life would become these creatures. Once they came back to life, they would wait in their graves, surrounded by treasures. If a grave robber came to ransack them, well, they would have to go through the DRAUGR first. In fact, they were believed to have superhuman strength, and they were described as having a terrible decaying smell to them, and were hideous to look at. They would kill their victims by crushing them, devouring them, or driving them insane. This is what also led the Vikings to take such caution when burying the dead. They did not want them coming back to life as this zombie creature. And in our number 1 spot, we have the BLOT. The BLOT was another form of sacrifice for the gods. This was a blood sacrifice to show gratitude towards them, and it was performed publicly multiple times per year. When performing this sacrifice, animals were sliced over an altar of stones. The blood was then collected and passed around. But wait, it gets worse. As it was passed around, people took sips of the blood while chanting along. Then the body of the animal was passed around while the chanting continued. And finally, the animal was then saturated in its own blood. The bigger the animal that was sacrificed symbolized a higher level of gratitude towards the gods. Now, this ritual was said to happen 4 times or more per year. It was done for the winter solstice, spring equinox, summer solstice, and autumn equinox. Not only that, but if anything bad happened, like let's say they had a bad harvest, then they would do this ritual to call to the gods for help. Alright guys, that's all for today's video. Let me know in the comments below which one of these facts shocked you the most. And now let's move on to our comment shoutout portion. I'll be shouting out comments from the video Top 10 Dark Things the Vikings Did Part 1. Timothy John commented, Flaming Boat or Dead Body 1 was shown in How to Train Your Dragon 2? A Disney movie showed that? There's no way. Maybe it wasn't as graphic. I don't know. Disney? Really? Brian Williams commented, have an awesome Lindsay. Have an awesome Lindsay? I think they meant to have an awesome day, Lindsay. But have an awesome Lindsay. Thank you. Thanks again for an awesome video. Have a wonderful day and keep smiling. Thank you, Brian. Hope you have an awesome Lindsay too. I'm sorry. Okay. Easter Myri Torfeet, I am so sorry, I know I said your name wrong. Mr. Yeaterfeet, I don't know, I'm so sorry, commented 63rd. 63rd. I love the Blood Eagle. Y'all are the best horror YouTube. I really want to shout out, so please. Also, Epic People, well, here's your shout out. But also, you like the Blood Eagle? You know what, I'm not even gonna question it. That's fine. You can, whatever, we're just gonna move on. Alright guys, that's all the comments I'm showing out for today's video. Make sure to comment something down below for a chance to be featured in my next comment shout out. And as always, don't forget to give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe to Most Amazing Top 10 for more amazing videos. I've been your host, Lindsay Ivan, and I'll see you when I see ya. Viking warriors were actually pretty superstitious. She's into superstition. Okay. Okay.